Jeff Johnston here, host of the Living Undeterred podcast. I have a special guest today, Terrance Williams from the wonderful state of Florida. Having a condo there for 6 years down in the Tampa Clearwater area, I became very fond of the great people in Florida and obviously the wonderful weather, unless you're in hurricane season, but we won't talk about that today. Hey, Terrance, great to see you again, and thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and it's always a pleasure seeing you, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited because you're the first guest I've ever had on the show to talk about what we're going to talk about today. Because, I'm on this quest and this mission to find all options available for mental wellness. People that follow my story, they know that our son Seth died from a fentanyl overdose or poisoning, let's say, because that's what it was. In 2016, when fentanyl really wasn't known, mental health was discussed, but it was still kind of taboo. There was a lot of stigmas with it. And then I watched right after that, my wife really, not that there's a good way to handle losing a child, but certainly there's a bad way. And, I was on that road as well. And that's what the better, not bitter mindset's all about, And unfortunately, I watched my wife, slowly succumb to the disease of alcoholism that really came from the grief of losing a child. So, I went from Terrance, age 50, not really caring anything about mental health. I was your typical American capitalist. And then, 6, 7 years later, now I'm 57, widowed, minus a son and, a chance, time in my life when I should be out traveling with my wife and enjoying the fruits of my labor. So I bump into you on LinkedIn and I see what you're doing for mental health. And I'm like, I got to get this guy on my show and talk more about, well, before I tell anybody, why don't you tell people a little bit about you and then we can talk about what you do with mental health.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Terrance Williams. I am the founder of Meta Wellness. My company builds virtual reality simulations for mental health professionals, like coaches, therapists, nonprofits, so that they can have their experiences, their telehealth sessions, their group sessions, exposure therapy, all types of things in virtual reality in the metaverse. Been creating simulations for about 2 years now. Worked with over 100 different clients, and we're continuously to grow. And it's been a ride. It's definitely been a ride. Especially doing something so new, and just the effects of it has been just amazing. So we're here now, and we're still going to grow, and it's been a pleasure so far. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, the interesting part for me, Terrance, is the traditional way of dealing with mental health, mental illness challenges is to send your child or yourself to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a therapist or a doctor, and then that person would assess you. And then based on their experience and whatever, models they're using to diagnose, they'll come up with a label for you. And then based on that label, that depends on what type of insurance benefits you can get, depends on what type of medicine you're prescribed. And that's kind of the way that we've done mental health. And I call it very reactive, not proactive. It's very treatment-based, not prevention-based.
Yeah,
so,
that's correct.
Again, I started thinking to myself, there's got to be other ways out there that are very invasive, non-invasive, and effective for mental health coping therapy, things like that, or maybe even prevention. So the world of VR has always interested me. Now, I will tell you, at my age, I'm very naive on this topic, Terrance. I've done the headset, the Oculus, or whatever. I got almost claustrophobic with it in a way, which is ironic because I scuba dive, so I'm very comfortable being in those areas. But and then that claustrophobic feeling kind of went away, and but I can certainly see where if you can create, because we're such a visual species,
Right.
And I know personally for me, I like to see things more than I like to be hearing things or even feeling things. So step us through where this idea came about, why you think this is an effective way for maybe veterans or people that are dealing with anxiety or depression, why virtual reality can be, an extra arrow in the quiver. It may not be the one thing that solves everything, but it's certainly something that gives you more ability to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And wow, where do I start? So I guess everybody has their origin story, right? So my origin story started at a mattress store, and I worked at this mattress company for about a year. And during that year, I had a trainer named Hope. Her name was Hope, ironically.
Yeah.
And at this mattress store, there's two reasons why I really despise this mattress store. The first reason was because everybody, no matter if the store manager, the training manager, and I was hired as a training manager. So the training manager, the store manager, and the area manager all made the same salary. So if you got promoted to be a store manager, it's the same salary as the training manager.
Mm.
And I had just got my master's, so being able to be stuck and not being able to grow with the company, and it was just day one, and I didn't even tell me this, right? Going in there, and didn't even know that this was the ceiling, that I already hit the ceiling day one, was very hard for me because I had just got my MBA. I had so much ambition and
Yeah.
etc. And the second reason it was so bleak was because of my trainer Hope. Hope made my life miserable every single day,
Wow.
yelling at me, antagonizing me.
How old were you at this time?
I was 26, 27,
Okay.
just fresh out of the masters, and no matter what I did, I remember getting my first sale. Was so happy. Ran up to her. She just yelled at me, told me to go clean the bathroom, like, and would tell me I'm worthless. Just over that. So over time, I got depressed. My first time ever feeling depressed was during this time. And
Isn't that just so unnecessary? I mean, for anyone listening to this that's in a position of leadership, I mean, wow, what a buzzkill, literally. I mean, what a way to take a young man who's got a lot of fight, a lot of heart, and then just beat him down like that. I mean, but there's a lot of people out there that's how they run their businesses.
it was really well, I wouldn't say traumatizing. It was very, very depressive time in my life because you're sitting in this store with mattresses, all these beds, these Tempur-Pedics. You're not allowed to lay on any of them, and you're just sitting here getting yelled at and belittled. I'm getting weight. You're stuck there sometimes 10 hours a day, not seeing
Mm.
any customers. It was just horrible. And I remember one day she got a phone call, and it was another area manager who promoted her to an area manager of a different district, and she was just so excited. She was crying, and this was a woman who complained about working at this company every single day.
Mm.
And this one phone call made her so excited to be a part of this. She was already there for 10 years, so for
Mm.
her to just get another promotion, same salary, more responsibilities, I just knew that I couldn't be stuck like this for the next 10 years.
Right.
Started hearing stuff about the metaverse. My buddy had a pair of Oculus goggles. He put them on me, said, "Holy crap." I started getting goosebumps. I looked around me. There's birds flying. There's people
Yeah.
talking in the background. I'm just like, what is this? He was like, not only is this, am I seeing this? He was like, there's ways to actually learn how to do this. So I imported the rule of 100. And the rule of 100 states that if you take 100 hours in a year, which is 18 minutes a day, and you dedicate 18 minutes a day to a certain discipline, whether it's swimming,
Yep.
piano, writing,
Yep.
dedicate 18 minutes a day, which is 100 hours a year, that you'll end up at the end of the year being 95% better than the entire population in that discipline.
I believe
So
you.
that's
Yep.
what I did.
Yeah,
And then
it's
I just,
funny because you don't need, massive amounts of commitment. It's the quality of the time that you're committed.
yeah, absolutely. And then from there, I started doing things with, I started creating these simulations. I started building houses and all these other things, and nobody liked it.
Did
But
you
then
have
a
a
lot of people,
technology background, or were you schooled in that at all?
my master's was in business and my bachelor's was in advertising. I literally was almost held back for math in the third grade before. Suffered through math my entire student, career and stuff. And then I just ended up in my math. It was into my master's program. I took a class called econometrics, and it was the only class I had. It was the last class I had to pass in order to get my master's. I had to literally force myself to learn math to a degree. So I literally stalked my teacher every day. I found his number. I was messaging him, texting him like, "Hey," like little things like this. And then it was so funny because I ended up really getting a C in the class. But he was like, "Yo, you went so hard this year. I'm just gonna give you the B, bro." I was just
Effort paid off. Yeah.
yeah, it's the effort, and sometimes that's all it is. And then so I started developing all these simulations after I started learning things, and then from there, I just started learning about the impact of just how virtual reality just has in general. And there's just so many different stories that we could talk about. But just virtual reality in general, it's not as new as people think. It's kind of been around. It's just now that we're starting to hear about the metaverse and AI
Mm-hmm.
and VR and all these things, and it's coming about. So I would build simulations for. You mentioned claustrophobia before. I built a simulation where somebody who suffered claustrophobia would go into an elevator. The elevator doors would close in on him. The doors would start shaking. He would start feeling really compacted. And the exposure therapy is one of the best forms of using VR. And he was cured of his claustrophobia because you're able to put them in this controlled environment over time to let them conquer their fear.
And then you can manipulate the outcome maybe to show them that, hey, it's not as bad as you think, right?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. There is a guy, one of the famous stories. This guy's name is Jimmy Castellanos. I love this story. Jimmy was in Iraq serving, his deployment there. He was only 5 months in Iraq. He ended up having a best friend there. Over time, had his bunkmates, his comrades, whatever. A part of his job was to go on convoys and go out into Iraqi villages and like pick up things, monitor civilians, etc. On this specific day, his commanding officer told him to switch positions with his bunkmate, which is his best friend. So his bunkmate, so he had to stay behind and basically watch the camp while his best friend took his position and rode out into Iraq. About 10 minutes down, he could see the convoy going out to the array, to the distance. He sees a helicopter go over his head. Next thing you know, he sees his comrade's convoy blow up from a bomb. Exploded. He gets into a car, rushes over there. He notices that there's a guy who was sitting in the same seat he was supposed to sit in that night, was dead.
Wow.
His comrade, his bunkmate, was paralyzed in the back seat, screaming in pain. His other two comrades are in the car, all died as well.
Wow.
So he went through this traumatic experience, and then after he left Iraq, he was still suffering from PTSD. He had nightmares. He would go into the bathroom, into public bathrooms, and if he would just check between doors, between different stalls, and etc. Check behind locks, all these type of things. He had a phone call from one of his mentors, and it was somebody that a mentor that basically got him into the college that he got into after Iraq. And they were talking about how they're doing this test with VR. So he was chosen as one of the 10 participants for this study, right? So it was him and these 9 other people who all suffer from a different form of PTSD. Because I want people to remember that 1 out of 3 people who go through a traumatic event suffer from PTSD. Whether it doesn't always have to be war. It can be gun violence.
That's a good point.
All different types of things.
Yeah.
So they got to see different people from different backgrounds. But with him, they put him in a room and they gave him a prop M16 gun. And they put him into this room. They put the VR headsets on. And next thing you know, he hears a helicopter again going over.
Wow.
He opens his eyes. He sees helicopters going. He hears artillery shells ringing from his ear. He sees soldiers running to the distance, shooting at their enemies. And he started freaking out. This was Iraq all over again. But after 6 months of this treatment, just going over time, he was completely healed from his PTSD. He doesn't remember the last time he had a dream about Iraq. So we love stories like that because it's just so powerful. But we see so many different things happen with VR. There's so many different studies that go on. So it's really cool.
How do you protect against someone getting triggered, to a negative impact? I mean,
Yeah.
What type of protocols are there to make sure that, that doesn't set somebody off,
Yeah. So the really cool thing about VR is you don't have to be in there alone, right? So when Jimmy is in there, you can have other people in this virtual reality simulation that can kind of monitor what's going on.
When you mean in the room or actually like in the screen? Like, I don't know the terminology. Okay.
Yeah, both. So in the actual virtual reality simulation with you, and they're also going to be in the actual room with you as well. Just have your VR headsets as well. So you're able to control how serious, how long, just like a video game, it can be easy or hard mode too.
Yeah.
So you can have it to where it's just like a couple enemies that you can see in distance, or you can have a whole battlefield where bombs are going off everywhere. You can control the environment. And over time, you want to get to that easy mode, to that hard mode in the controlled simulation. That way you can get over it and conquer it. But we see effects of VR all over the place. With PTSD, we're seeing success rates over 90%. When it comes to phobias and traumas, we're seeing success rates of 83%. So far it's been so good. So far it's been good.
Yeah, and that's really what we need. We need to have more options on the table. Right now there's just what is out there. If it was working, we'd see the numbers getting better, but they're not. So yeah, it's like when I meditate, I wear a mask. I didn't used to. I used to just sit there and close my eyes, and then meditate. But recently I've been actually wearing a mask to keep it really dark. And it's changed the quality and the intensity of my meditation. I think I can get deeper when I block out all the light. And I almost have a little more, when you close your eyes and it's fairly, your eyes adjust maybe to if it's not pitch black in the room, you still see things even with your eyes closed. I mean, you can see debris and things like that on your eyelids, and then you can actually see things like a vision, like you're dreaming, even during meditation. So I've just noticed that the intensity of my meditation sessions are better when I completely block out the sunlight. So maybe there's something about that contributing to the VR experience, since it is blocking out external light, but then the world that's created internally inside the Oculus,
Yeah.
there's something about that environment that maybe allows people to role play or, kind of test out scenarios,
All types of things. So there was a study when it comes to behavioral medicine, and they had burn victims. And what they found was what they did was they put them in a VR setting, and the VR setting was in the snowy mountains. You can actually have a snowball fight, create snowmen, etc.
Hmm.
They put these people in this simulation for 3 weeks, and what they found was that at the end of 3 weeks, 35 to 50% of just their pain was relieved just being in this simulation for this period. So they're finding all different types of ways to really impact. But going back to what you were saying about just the meditation, we're seeing that as well when it comes to, especially when it comes to NBA players. There was a company that reached out to me and said they're doing VR for sports and etc. So when NBA players, before they actually go into the game, they can actually put on the headsets, just listen to a nice breeze of the music, be in a nice beach, and just sit there and just meditate and just relax before games happen. So, which is pretty cool as well.
So I guess this begs the question: if this is the results that look really promising, and it seems like there's more upside and more positive things from these experiences than bad, then what are the barriers to entry for the? I think I know the answer because you and I talked about this a week ago. But what are the challenges to get this in the hands of everybody out there? What's the barriers for most people?
Oh, the biggest barrier is just the ubiquitousness of just getting these headsets to on everybody. They're not just as popular as just having a laptop
Yeah,
or an iPhone yet. Apple's coming out with their headsets. Sony has theirs. Facebook has theirs. I think it will be more ubiquitous in the future, but right now it's just not that common to see. And also because an average headset can cost $299 to $399. So when people think about that, they don't want to necessarily invest into just doing that, thinking that it's just for one cause, right? Just for one therapy. But the cool
yeah.
thing about Oculus is you can use it for that. You can watch Netflix on it. I was watching the Lakers Grizzly game yesterday courtside. So in the Oculus and the virtual reality
Oh,
sitting.
really?
Yeah, I was sitting courtside in VR, and it looked just like I was at the actual game, but I was just sitting courtside
So
watching.
it wasn't playing the game live. It was just a fake game.
No, it was the real game.
Really?
Yeah, they
So you're
played the real
watching
game
the real game live on the
as if I'm
Oculus.
seeing it on TV, but it looks like I'm
Huh.
actually there. It's like so the just so
You,
people understand the clarity. It would be just like you're watching it on
wow.
TV. So it
Wow.
doesn't look fake at all, but it actually makes it feel like you're actually at the game. So it
Hmm.
looks like you're at the actual game, but you're just sitting courtside just watching it. And everybody can
Interesting.
sit there. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. So I was able to watch LeBron do his thing last night, so that was pretty fun. And yeah, and that's been pretty well. But I think another big thing is what we see in just therapy is, in general, is that a lot of men just don't gravitate toward therapy. So I
Yeah.
think that's another barrier as well, because what we're finding is when we actually put men in these simulations, they're actually way more open and honest than they would be if they were like face to face. And I'll give you an example when it comes to marriage counseling. So we have marriage counselors that tell me like, hey, we've worked with this guy and his wife, and this guy has never opened up, and it's been 2 weeks. We tried VR. They both in their digital space and they're communicating, and the man has been just way more open and honest
Hmm.
about his feelings and stuff. Because when you're in there, you see the person's digital format, their digital avatar. You don't see
Oh,
their actual face. So being able to talk to their digital avatar has been given a sigh of more comfortability when it comes for men. So which has been
it's
pretty
almost
cool.
like texting. Texting's easier because you can just text and
Oh yeah,
you
I'm a
don't have to
texter.
see someone's face and all that. But
Oh yeah,
um,
texter for sure.
yeah. So, do you suggest people use the VR, from a frequency standpoint, like daily, or is it weekly, or is it something you plan on doing for a lifetime, or is there a
So
process or a system you guys have developed that you think works well for mental health?
yeah, so it depends on what people are looking for. So with our environments, we create anything. So you can have a sit alone session with a client. You can have a group session, if you think like Alcohol Anonymous with people.
Hmm.
You can have exposure therapy when it comes to like I was mentioning that a snowman, that snowball fight. There's so many different ways. But I just suggest that anybody that uses VR is to just talk to their therapist first. Let the therapist be in more so in control over the aspects of what they're doing. So rely on them. Don't try to actually do it for yourself and say, hey, go to somebody and say, hey, Bill, I'm a war veteran, build me something. to conquer my PTSD, and you don't have any support or any,
Mm,
support from a therapist
yeah.
or anyone there with you. So I would
So
do
it's
that as
not an
well.
isolated like one and done thing. It's something where it's
Over weeks.
incorporated. It's incorporated within your whole mental health plan.
Well, for me, I just build the simulations. So a lot of the people that I work with, so they will build. They when I give it to them, it's kind of just on their own to what they want to do with it. But usually, yeah, it's never just a one time thing. They do this for like a successful amounts of time period, because what we see is when it hits the 3 to 6 weeks, we start seeing success rates of like 60-70% when they start staying in the treatment that long. So usually that's typically how long people stay in their scenarios.
So if someone doesn't have an Oculus, you guys provide them either to purchase or to rent. Is that right?
We do. So they could either purchase or rent through us. Through our platforms, we have to have Oculus. There's a lot of other companies that do it. They have their own type of headsets, and there's a difference when it comes to quality or interactiveness or what certain companies can do with their VR platforms. It's not a one shop all, like this company can do exactly what this company
Mm-hmm.
can do. Some companies can make it look extremely like it looks like the beach, but you can't do anything on the beach.
Hmm.
And there's other companies that it looks a little bit cartoonish on the beach, but hey, I can play volleyball on the beach. So there's a difference of clarity and and et cetera, what you get out of it.
So is this considered the metaverse then?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Everyone that we're dealing with, like we create these platforms, it's in the virtual reality simulations, but it is in the metaverse.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't have any. I'm pretty naive on that whole topic. I don't have never I've never spent time in the metaverse.
It's all good. You will in the future.
Yeah, it seems like yeah. So where's the pushback coming from? Where do you get? Do you have any industry people that say, "Oh, this is just snake oil salesman. This is just smoke and mirrors, or this is something that's just a gimmick"? I mean, or you're not getting a whole lot of pushback from people, maybe other than availability and price.
Well, that's one thing that we get. We also get a lot of like HIPAA questions. So people are like, "Oh, is this HIPAA compliant?" Or
How about
things like
insurance? Is any way this is covered under insurance yet?
not from what we deal with. I'm not too completely sure on how other people are handling it. I would think not, though.
Yeah, for now,
Honestly,
you never know. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of like just people are kind of put regulations on crypto. It's kind of like
yeah,
now the government is now stepping in. It's like, wait, hold on, I need to get my cut of the money now. So yeah, as time goes on, I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot more regulations that go on. But right now, absolutely nothing. And we talk about trying to get people just as much involved in this as possible. Because when I first started out as a man going through these trials and tribulations from the mattress store, learning how to code, all these things, going through my depressive mindset, I really just learned over time how men are just affected and don't seek out therapy as much as women do.
hmm
But I really feel as though, and I think I might mention this before, when it comes to different countries or different societies in the West, like the United Kingdom, the United States, the United Kingdom, for example, the United Kingdom, the number one cause of death for men under the age of 45 is suicide. And
mm,
I think stuff like that really staggers me. It's really baffling to think. But and I looked at the United States, the number two cause of death is suicide.
yep,
Number one cause of death is homicide. So if we're not killing ourselves, we're killing each other. And there's just not a lot of outlets that men are taking. So I hope that VR will be just an outlet that men can eventually gravitate toward to try to get to a better place in life.
yeah. It seems to me that this VR option will become a lot more prevalent because I think we are really seeking ways to get our mental health better. And men
Right.
particularly, it's been abysmal for us, our inability to be vulnerable and to share stories because of shame and guilt, and that hey, we were raised to be toughen up. I come from the generation where I grew up with three brothers. you know,
Yeah.
we had problems. We kind of just figured it out ourselves, through conflict resolution, et cetera. And
Yeah.
it just seems like men are very distant. Even today, we have lots of progress on men's mental health.
Yeah.
We still
Well,
can do so much better.
I when it comes to men in therapy, they get treated like women in therapy. So a lot of men, they go in for depression, and what therapists do, they treat them like women with depression. So when men go into therapy, they're made to feel loved and accepted, but how men really want to feel is respected and powerful. They want to feel competent. They want to be respected by their peers and etc.
Mm-hmm.
So when a man goes into therapy, he's not getting what he needs most of the time, because they're going in and treating his depression as if they're treating a woman with depression. But people
Yeah.
don't realize we're two completely different creatures at the end
Right.
of the day. We're biologically different. Like how you're saying you and your brothers did conflict and that's how you were raised. That's how a lot of men just kind of look at the world. We're taught to be stoic. But I think it's a lot of innate and stuff that God put in us. And when it comes to our biology, like God made us this way for an example. So, and when I say that because in this society now today, it seems like they want men to be more emotional.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then that's show more emotions. That's when you get school shooters. That's when you get rapists. That's when you get kidnappers. It's men that can't control their emotions that are the most dangerous men in society. But you can actually teach a man to understand his role in society and also give him the therapy that he needs when it
Hmm.
comes to helping him feel respected and competent so that he can grow into his purpose. That's when you'll start seeing progress. And that's when I think you'll see a lot of men go into therapy more.
And you see right now just the proliferate. You see the numbers of uh, young men, you'll say teenage boys that are really, really struggling. Lack of hope,
Yeah.
lack of purpose, lack of meaning.
Yeah.
Frustrated with everything from the political conversations that adults have that can't even I could sit around back in the day and watch my grandpa and my dad talk politics, and boy, it was very cordial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
It's different.
you bring up Trump at a table and you don't know who's
Yeah.
going to get
It's
stabbed.
pretty,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's
pretty bad that you can't even have conversations because there's so much hatred. And I think young men get pulled into following people. The people on social media. I won't name names, but some of these men that are not leaders of men, they're just intimidating young men to basically buy into their ideology. It's almost like
right.
a cult. And so there's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
generation of young men, 15 to 20 out there. It's a large block of humanity that's
Yeah.
very frustrated. They
And
don't
we're
feel
seeing,
like they're getting support. They feel like, hey, if I show that I'm a strong man, I'm going to get criticized by society. That
yeah.
toxic masculinity issue where men today are almost afraid to show, that inner thing we were born with, that drive
Yeah.
that kind of wants to be sucked out of us by society to make us a lot more laid back, maybe, and more conforming.
Yeah. And when it comes to toxic masculinity, I don't remember the person's name, but the person who coined the name, I think it was the two brothers. When they coined the name, it came from their father, who was a military person, who was a very strict, straight to the book, no BS type of
Hmm.
guy. And they took that personality and they coined the term toxic from it. And I believe in masculinity. I don't believe in the abuse of masculinity, especially when
Right.
it comes to harming anybody, especially women. I believe that as a man, your job is to protect women, provide for women, and especially when I think about stories like the Titanic, when it was come down to women and children on the boat, and the men stood behind to protect the women and go down with the ship to make sure that the women and children got safe. I believe that as a man's duty to always protect and provide. So I believe in that wholeheartedly. But I do believe you're right. There is a lot of propaganda from a lot of different people that are trying to tell people this is how a man should be, to embrace violence, to try to create violence, to try to hurt other people. And I don't believe that is the key. I believe that men and women are both happy when they're together. And I believe that a lot of the things that men are missing now is the fact that they're missing a woman at home. So you mentioned a lot of 15 and 16-year-olds. There's a study done right now that was between the ages of 18 and 30 that men between the ages of 18 and 30 are either a virgin or haven't had sex in a year.
Hmm.
And they're seeing now that in the year 20, by the year 2033, that 45% of women will either be single or without children.
Hmm.
And I always am a firm believer that one reason that men never went to therapy was because their women was also their therapist. And
Hmm.
women have a natural healing power about them that is so unparalleled that people can't even imagine.
Right.
When you are going through something, when you are hurt, because as a man, we are built to take on more suffering, to take on more trauma, and etc. But we also have a healing that we need. And our woman was that healing. If you look at any hero, Spider-Man,
Hmm.
Superman, when he's down, he doesn't have the energy, the courage, the heart to keep going. It's the words of Lois Lane, it's the words of Mary Jane that actually gets him to that point to want to get up and save the day, because he remembers what he's fighting for. Men have always fought for women. That's why
Hmm.
they got him to go fight. And this is why a
Hmm.
lot of men went out to war. It wasn't because they wanted to go out to battle. It's because they knew they had to protect their woman. And I
Yeah.
believe teaching that level of masculinity is imperative But the toxic side of it, I do see why people say that a lot of things are toxic. But masculinity can be a beautiful thing, just like femininity can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's a respect thing. I mean, it just comes down to respect. It's like, um, I I grew up, I'm 57, so I grew up in a generation where my mom was always like, and my dad was, everybody's, in our best mindset, everybody's equal. And then, help out those that are older, help out women if they need help. And so like today it's conflicting because in the last year I've had situations where I was on an airplane and there was luggage up there and, we landed and people were kind of antsy to get off. And there was an old, a lady, not older. In this case, it was like a college lady trying to get her luggage down. And I leaned over to help and I instantaneously got the death look, like, what are you doing? I don't need a man's help. And then, that same day I'm going down and there's a door and I reach over to open the door. And whenever I do that for a woman, I always say, oh, I'm old school. I'm sorry if this offends you, but I'm old school. And most of
Yeah,
them are very polite and they say, oh, thank you. And thank you. But it's like, I think men get really conflicted today. It's like, am I supposed to open doors for women? Am I supposed to help carry things? That's how I am wired, whether I offend a woman or not. That's not my intent.
that's
I
really
just learned from my dad to do that and my mom. It's like help that old lady
beautiful.
across the street. I don't care what they look like. I don't care if they're rich or poor. And it's the same way I go through my day. I'm always that way. But every so often I kind of get that death stare like, what are you doing? I don't need a man to help me. And I'm like, well, I'm
This is the
sorry,
thing.
but I'm doing it again. The next person I see, I'm going to open the door for. That's just the way I am.
Yeah, and I think it's more of a Western society thing. This independent movement is really gonna, like I said before, 2033, 45% of women are gonna be single without kids, and it's a lot of that independent, like, don't help me, I don't need a man. But I don't think you really hear men saying that they don't need women. I think men understand how important women are, even if it's just from a healing side or just an emotional side. But I think we live in a society where women truly, we they are a lot privileged more. They're able to work a lot more now. They're able to have these careers and etc. They're making a lot more money than men in a lot of different areas, and it comes with a lot of independence that they feel as though they don't need a man for certain things. But I
Mm-hmm.
think in general we need each other. Men need women, women need men, and women need men one by proxy. Because if the whole world, if the lights went out, I think it would become a very savage place very quickly. You look
Mm.
at a lot of just different riots that happened in Maryland, etc. When there was no law and order,
Yeah.
people tore the streets up. And I don't think women understand, maybe to a sense, how destructive men could be,
Yeah.
how vicious men can be. But we live in a very nice society where everything's protected. You have the military, you have the police, you have the guard, you have all these people around you to protect you. But if everything just went off just like that, people will realize how quickly and dark the world could really be very fastly.
Yeah, there's no question that that is true. If you just look at situations where there's, a little bit of a letdown from protection and all hell breaks loose many times.
Yeah.
So, going back to different ways people can improve their mental health. I mean, for you personally, Terrance, what are some things you can divulge to our listeners that you do for your self-care? And let's don't count VR because obviously we know you're very pro in that area. But what are some things that you do that you go to, kind of your go-to mental health coping mechanisms for Terrance when he needs a pick me up?
I work out 3 times a week, and I play Call of Duty.
All right.
my those are my relief times as well. So, but yeah, I work out 3 times a week, and I try to stay consistent with it, and
Hmm.
whether I'm seeing results or not, just being dedicated and focused on something as a goal. I think a lot of people can benefit from. It doesn't even have to be working out. I think people should pick up certain habits or certain traits or certain hobbies. Or I'm trying to say, like, even if it's like riding a bike, just
Hmm.
be dedicated to it. Learn something about it. Try to get better at it every single day, especially on the men's side. Because I spoke on this earlier, how men need a purpose and a vision
Absolutely.
towards something. And when a man has that vision, it doesn't matter. He'll walk through glass. He'll go through a burning building. He doesn't care. As long as he has a purpose and a vision to get to
Yep.
his goal,
Yeah.
he'll go the way. So get into a hobby that could definitely benefit you. Input the rule of 100. Pick up a skill, whether it's writing, speaking, something, but just dedicate it. And once you start seeing yourself grow and become better at it, it's a confidence builder. Whether that's in the gym, whether that's swimming, playing basketball, whatever you decide to do, just dedicate time to actually learn and get better at it. And I think over time, it's going to actually make you feel better inside because you're actually progressing in something. So
Do you think sometimes that when it comes to purpose, meaning and purpose, that we are searching for meaning and purpose where we should be allowing meaning and purpose to come to us? In other words, we want to, I'm at a certain age where it's important for me to have like a calling, right? And I found it, through death, what's important to me in my life. And for some people though, purpose hasn't revealed to them yet. They don't really know what their purpose is. How do you get somebody that's, say, in their mid 50s, man or woman, doesn't matter, and they're struggling with finding purpose? How do you get someone to actually find their purpose? Or do you just kind of go through life and have faith and confidence, and all of a sudden one day purpose will just show up like a vision, kind of like what it did for me? I wasn't certainly intending to be doing this 6 years ago.
yeah.
But so, I mean, I guess my question is this: what do you tell somebody that's struggling with trying to find their meaning and purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the best thing that you can do is that understand that your dreams and what you may call your purpose could possibly change. You
Yeah,
may want to be a painter one year, and then
hands
you may
down.
feel like you're right.
Yep.
If the thing is, and this is where a lot of people seem to drop the ball, is it's really not most so about purpose, is more so about consistency. When you
Hmm.
are consistent in something, no matter what it is, because every day I don't wake up feel like building VR stuff. Every day I don't feel like doing certain things. There's gonna be days where I absolutely hate it. Days that I actually really get excited about it. Days I really feel like it's the purpose. It's about the consistency.
Mm.
Any successful person, no matter if they had an idea, let's take Mark Zuckerberg for example. Mark Zuckerberg, when he first developed Facebook, he wanted it to be a dating app.
Yep.
That's where he went to. If he would have just stuck on, I'm going to be a dating app, this is my purpose, it would have never been a dating app. He was
Right.
able to evolve, but he still stayed consistent with Facebook to where it could grow into something differently. And now it's going to VR. Now he bought out Instagram, which now Instagram is the biggest dating app right now. So he still was able
Mm.
to accomplish his dream and his purpose. But I think the purpose that men really need is not specific to a certain thing. It's just about giving back to your community and being a positive light and being something or somebody that is respected for whatever. Because you can dig dirt for $100 million a year, but it's not your purpose. So if your purpose is to have that money where you can build foundations for children that need homes and etc., you can use that skill that you have to develop a certain purpose. Once you develop certain skills, different purposes, different dreams can come about it. It's about staying focused and consistent, because consistency is the key. Everyone, the difference between people that fail to succeed, the people that succeed just stay more consistent than the people that failed.
Yeah, there's no question, because to change behavior, you have to do so many things, so many days in a row, and be very consistent with that if you want to change behavior.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know how many days it is, but it's like 20 or something days that you have to do something.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause remember, I
part.
told you I was really big when I was working at the mattress store. I got really really fat, right? And I hated working out. I hated the cardio. So what I did was I said, you know what? No matter if I hate it, love it, I don't get any results. 20 minutes a day for 3 days a week. I'm going to the gym to lift weights, and I lost 20 pounds over a span of 5 or 6 months. People want results so quickly. Sometimes it does. It's not about getting the
Yeah,
results quickly. It's about putting in the work and the time and the effort to
yeah,
get there. If you want to just get a six pack and get surgery to have it, you're not going to appreciate your six pack as if
right,
you're going to actually go to the gym and earn it. And once a
right.
man actually earns something, he's going to feel respected. He's going to feel as though he has met his purpose or he's fulfilling his purpose, and that's what men need.
That is so true. There's something about when you change your mindset and you're more of in service for other people. And I say that in this context, that you're in service of other people without expecting anything back in return. It's almost like doing something anonymously. Today, it's hard to do that, because if I go work at a homeless shelter or go work at a nursing home and try to help people with whatever they're going through, the inclination is to go to Facebook or LinkedIn and show pictures of me with these people and then brag. And in a way, I can see the utility of that, because showing you're doing something good could get other people to say, hey, if Jeff can do it, maybe I can do it. So there is some benefit in that, but it can get a little bit narcissistic in a way, especially in social media, where people are constantly posting, their
Their whole life.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it. I fall to that trap as well. I mean, if I give a speech for a Rotary Club, I want to post that I gave a speech. It helps. It helps with our brand. It helps with what we're trying to do in regards to our app we're launching. I mean, all that goodwill. But I think that can be overplayed in the mental health space sometimes. I think sometimes you hear people kind of going to their story like too frequently, and
Yeah,
I think people at some point can almost get turned off by that.
yeah,
And I've been early on, it was hard for me to walk into a room and not within a couple seconds be talking about Seth, immediately,
yeah.
because that's where my heart was. And I thought, everybody's interested about what happened to Seth and how he died and all that. But after a while, I realized everybody's interested in their own story
Yeah,
and not a
yeah.
lot less about mine.
And they want
And
to
so
relate to you. Yeah,
I've learned to I've learned to tell my story now as a way to give permission to other people to share their stories to me. So now I spend a lot less time on what happened to me, why it happened to me, looking for sympathy or pity. And now my time is, okay, I'm going to tell you a nugget about me and my story, but I want to hear your story. I want to
well,
hear why mental health's important to you. I want to hear what happened in your childhood that made you realize that, men need some support systems out there as they get older. That's my real motive now today is I want to find out a little bit more, and that's why the podcast has been great because you talked about working in the mattress store. You talked about your weight. You've already you revealed some personal things about you to a stranger that you've only met twice. And now you have an
yeah,
audience out there that can hear your story. And I think there's something in that. I really do. I think that's
there
very
is,
helpful.
because I believe in a lot of stories, especially the stories that hit home the most for people are the
Yeah.
people that see themselves in some part of your story,
Right.
where they can really relate or live vicariously through what you're talking about, through your
Yep.
experiences, and be like, you know what, I can relate to that. And they're going to pay attention a little bit more, right? So I think that's really important.
Well, I can't relate to your story. I had a bad boss. I've had bad coaches. I had my
Yeah,
basketball coach that was just verbally so abusive to us in high school. Probably a nice guy, but on the court he wasn't a good coach from
yeah,
that standpoint. I was overweight. Before I quit drinking 5 years ago, I was almost 190 pounds. I'm 154 now. So,
yeah.
I when you talked about the two things you went through, I could relate to what you went through.
You
Um,
know, it's really beautiful too, because I really realized that now that hope wasn't really my enemy. And I kind
correct.
of like that life is like a video game. You know, you're going the
Yeah.
right way, the more enemies you encounter.
Yeah.
But enemies aren't always in the form of people. Like hope was a person, but it really was the enemy of depression, the enemy of self doubt, the enemy of just the job, the task, the stress. She was just the avatar in that.
Yeah.
And I realized that when you really conquer and you have a strong mental health, when you have no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. I
Yeah.
truly believe that. And I believe that's the way to conquer mental health. And I like a lot of people that go through depression, go through certain things, they look at what they don't have rather than what they do have. And if I was back then in that magic store and I realized, hey, I do have my master's, hey, I'm alive, hey,
Hmm.
I have the ability to become better, to become stronger. So I started looking at the positive things. And I think I would have conquered a lot of those enemies within a lot sooner, and then hope wouldn't have been a problem.
There's something I kind of started recently to um, help me get through self doubt and thinking about the past and stuff. A friend of mine, his name's Ron Carson. He runs Carson Wealth Management out of Omaha. Done a super job on the advisory side. Built this behemoth practice up, but now he's really segueing into. He's about my age. Another part of living, and that's things to give back. In service and stuff. And I was talking to Ron. He's really big into world poverty and water purification and mental health. Those are like the three things he's big on.
Yeah,
And I was telling him, I said, gosh, a lot of times I get captured in thought. I go back into when Seth was alive. I go back when my wife was alive. I go back and look at decisions I made. And, I think as humans, we spend an inordinate amount of time, what I call captured in thought, going back to memories that really, really, in all honesty, they don't exist anymore. Nothing exists anymore. All we have is like right now. All I have is my moment with you, Terrance. But yet we spend so much time captured in memories and things that just don't exist anymore. And the universe doesn't care. The universe is really hypersensitive on today and right this moment. It doesn't really care about A dog doesn't know about its childhood. I mean, most things other than humans don't spend a lot of time in the past. And that's, again, it's okay if we spend time in the past on productive things, but we don't. We're inclined to be drawn to the bad things, just like we are watching TV shows. We watch the news, we want to see cops and we want to see live PD and we want to watch that stuff because it's exhilarating. But I think our
Yeah.
memories can do the same thing. We get really stuck going backwards. And then you look at the anxiety about the future. What am I going to do when I graduate college? And how's your VR company going to do? How's my app going to do in July? So we spent all this time in two realms of the universe that really don't exist.
Yeah.
There is no past, really. You can't go back there. And there really is no future because we're not there yet. I mean, a meteor could hit the earth in 10 seconds and we could all die. So it's imperative for us to really find ways to be present. And so Ron told me this quote, Terrance, and I love this quote. And he grabbed my arm because I was really getting worked up on some things. And he said, Jeff, you are exactly where you need to be in your life.
Yeah.
You're exactly where you need to be. You don't need to be any further behind. You don't need to be any further ahead. Everything you've done up to your life has come to this podcast with Terrance Williams.
Yeah.
Everything else, isn't really that important. And so that's kind of helped me lately when I've struggled with anxiety and stress about projects I'm working on and maybe loose ends, like an email I didn't respond to a week ago. And maybe that person's not going to like me anymore. But I've really got now, okay, I'm right where I need to be,
And, that's mental illness in general is typically when people are either living in the past or
Right.
living in the future, right?
Right.
So people are thinking like, oh, I shouldn't have done this, and they're depressed about it, or people are worried about their job security or their love life in the future instead of really just focusing in on the now. And
That's all
living
we
in
have. That's all we have is right
that's
now.
all we have, but all we have is it really is the now because you can't change tomorrow and you can't really prepare for the future, right? So it's kind
Right.
of like worrying about things that you can't worry about. And this is why I go into people worry about what they don't have rather than what they do have. If you worry about what you do have, you're living in that present moment at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And living in the past, living in the future can be very dangerous because you can live in the future. Let's say I win an award for something. In my head, yeah, I'm him. I'm the greatest. I can do
Mm-hmm.
this. And then, something can happen in the future where they could take this award away. Or you're
Mm-hmm.
living in the past saying, I can't become something. I can't be great because
Right.
of mistakes that I made in the past. But if
Right.
you really just took the time to say, what can I do to make today the best day possible? How I can make my happiness the best day possible? How can I make my loved ones the most happy right now? How can I just do my best at my job and just take it day by day? There was a story where this kid got lost in the woods and he couldn't see where he was going. And the owl was in a tree and he was scared. And the owl said, "What's wrong?" The kid said, "I don't know where I'm going." The owl said, "Do you see your feet?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Just take one step at a time
Mm.
and you'll find your way out." And I think that's how we should more so look at life. We kind of look at, I can't see the end of the forest. I can't see behind me. I can't see in front of me what's side by side. But if I can just see what I see right now in front of me and just take one step forward, eventually you're going to get to your destination.
Yeah. And look at the unknown as, I mean, I get frustrated when I look at kids and I look at what society wants to do, so we have things like anxiety and sleep issues and, stress and anxiety, all the things that, can cause problems, but that's what makes us human. And
Yeah.
if we take all that away and if we find ways to just basically eliminate stress, eliminate anxiety, eliminate fear, I think we just turn into cyborgs and androids. And I don't know if that's really what we want to do as humans, is to try to dumb us down to like be a machine
That's what
when I
technology's
think,
trying
well, I think anxiety is great. I think fear is great. I think
to do.
having
Living yourself.
hope and yeah, but it's how long you dwell there that's key. And anybody that's out there that's a motivational speaker or a life coach that's trying to eliminate all these things that make us human, be careful what you wish for. I don't
Right.
want a 15-year-old that's a robot. I don't want that. I want a 15-year-old that cries and laughs and
Have
feels
fun. Yeah.
anxiety and all that stuff.
This just wants to go to the park and play with his friends. We just missed the good old days. I knew you were talking about being a gentleman and helping the lady with her bags at the airplane, but I remember just I seeing a woman, even 20, 30 years old, and I'm 13, and she's standing on the bus. I just get up. Like
Yeah,
it
right,
was just new. Like nobody
right.
had to tell you to do it. You just felt an obligation and
Yeah,
a duty to
Now,
protect that.
were your parents pretty strong in your life, a big influence when you were growing up?
Yeah, I have both my parents in my life, but they never really sat down and said, "You hold the door open for a woman, you take, get flowers and stuff." It was just understood,
It was
and maybe it was
implied. It was,
pride,
yeah,
right? Like you treat a woman like you would want to treat your mother, like, and it was
right.
just how it was back in the day, and it was an easier time. It was way more nicer then. And they're right. Like I went on dates before, and I gave a girl a flower, and she's like, "Why you got to give me this flower? I got to hold this for the whole night." I'm just like, there was a time where that was it. That was the
Well,
move to make.
I'm quite a bit older than you, and even paying for dinners on a date. First of all, I haven't had a date since before I got married. So my wife's been gone almost 2 years, and I haven't been on a date or anything. It's not something I'm interested in at this point in my life. But I can imagine going on a date with somebody, another individual, female that's say 50, and me offering to buy dinner. It's like I'd be terrified to offer. I don't know what the response is going to be. I don't know if women in that age group are more like me, where they're okay with a man paying for things. That's just what I did when I went through the dating. I just paid for things. I don't know if women today would take offense to that, or if a woman feels like, well, if Jeff buys me dinner, he's going to think I owe him something. It's like, I
Right.
don't. I grew up. That's the way I grew up.
You
And
knew,
yeah,
yeah.
and so if I get back, not if, but when I get back into the dating scene, I am a little bit worried about offering to pay or
Well, how do
coming
you feel
out
about
and
gender roles?
what's that?
How do you feel about gender roles? Because that's kind of, the man paying is kind of like a gender role. So are you saying you still believe in the gender role process,
I
or do
do
you
for
women?
me, but I think
Yeah,
I'm old school. I think I'm going to meet women that are going to take offense to that, and I don't know how to react to that, because I've been married 21 years, so for 25 years of my life, I have not been on the dating scene. So the last 25 years, we didn't have online dating before I got married. We didn't have, dating apps. We went to bars or went to social places and met people, and actually had to I had to go up and ask a woman out for a date. Today you can do all that without ever having a face-to-face conversation until the moment you're on the date.
makes it harder.
And that's difficult for people in my generation, because we're not used to that.
Well, it's more different for men. It's really beneficial for women because
Oh
women can
yeah.
now they
Yep.
can literally just have their DMs open, and athletes,
Yep.
rich guys, average guys, people
Yep.
not even in your town can hit them up. And like you're saying,
Yep.
back in the day, is whoever's in your town, that was your pool to
Right.
date.
Right.
Now the world has opened up so much more. Instagram is the biggest dating app. We have Tinder, we have Hinge, we have all these different types
Yeah.
of things. And women only swipe right 5% of the time. Men are swiping and swiping, and they're not getting chosen because
See, I
typically
don't know
when
what
women,
that means, because I've never been on a dating app.
well, that
So that
means
means you
let's
like
say
somebody, you swipe a certain direction, or
yeah. So let's say there's 1,000 profiles, and you
okay,
swipe 1,000 different women that you want
okay,
to swipe right, like you're interested in. Only 5% of those women will actually show interest back.
interesting.
Yeah. So it's pretty, and it's because they have 1,000 other guys doing the
Yeah,
same thing. So they're able to say, okay, he looks rich, he looks broke, he's really cute. What kind of
right.
card? They're
So
able to
they
have
they can be more selective than we can, and
absolutely.
back in the day, when we went to a bar or whatever, I mean, it was pretty equal with single men, single women. So you're
Yeah.
saying today that the playing field's kind of shifted, where single men have a lot harder time to find a relationship than, say, a single woman does.
It's more competition because they're
Yeah,
not just facing the people in their society and their community. They're facing everybody on Tinder, everybody on Instagram,
yeah.
everybody on Hinge, when they go on, women go on trips way more now too. So like when you're going out, seeing all these different people, you can actually meet somebody. If you're from Miami, you're going on a trip to Orlando, or you're going on a trip to Charlottesville, whatever. You can actually meet somebody and stay connected with them because you have Instagram, you have all these different things to keep a
And
relationship going.
and you know what's sad for me, Terrence, is, and these people where, they're in a relationship for a little while. It's, guns a-blazing. They're posting things on Facebook, and then you find out they are not together. And then you find out that, the woman or the man is like within 2 weeks is like right back in another relationship.
Yeah,
And, there's that element of people that get into relationships very quickly because they can't be alone. I think that's one of the
that's
problems with
scary.
mental health today, is that we're not good being alone. We
Yeah,
need to have somebody in our lives. And if you're a person, because humans are connected, you know, species, we need to be connected. But there's
yeah.
something to say when you have an opportunity to get to know yourself better, i.e., you get divorced or you break up with someone after a long relationship. don't hurry right back into something, because you've got a
Right.
window of opportunity here where you can really get to love yourself and get to really know yourself. So when you meet somebody, you're a lot more open to being in a healthy relationship instead of a codependent one where you have to be in a relationship. I know people that can't be single. They just cannot be
Yeah.
alone for a
And
weekend. They have to have somebody.
that's another enemy within, right? That's what I
Yeah.
was saying before. There's an enemy within, enemy outside can do us no harm. When you have that love for your within yourself, and you're able to understand who you are, understand even just knowing certain details, what ticks you off,
Right.
what makes you happy, these little different
Yep.
things. You're able to understand when certain things come in your life, certain obstacles, how to maneuver from it because you know how it's going to deter or crush
Right.
some of your. And that's what a lot of just men and women just need to have, is to have that self love within themselves before they give it to others. Because if you don't love yourself, somebody else is definitely not going to love you.
Yeah. No, that's great. See, isn't that funny how we started off with VR and now we're talking about dating? That's what I love
Well,
about this podcast, because, you know, these conversations aren't just about one thing. I mean, mental health is your
everywhere.
joy, your peace that you have in your life. And we have
It's
this we have
fine.
this innate desire to become happy, which is so short and fleeting and so, unrewarding. You can go buy something and be happy, but it's not
Yeah,
going to add any peace and joy to your life. And you got to
right.
find ways to
Temporary
almost
happiness.
have less happiness and more peace and joy. And you get that through self-reflection, being in love with yourself, and then that'll allow you to be able to open up to somebody else better.
Right. And that's
You
why I
know,
kind of speak the differences between men and women. And going back on dating too, I can go on about this forever. But actually, dating in the metaverse, virtual reality is actually a real thing. I have met couples that have met in the metaverse who actually got married in real life and are married till this day. So even the aspect of just not even Tinder, Hinge, but people are getting
yeah,
dating VR, it's all completely different. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a completely different world that we're living in now. And I kind of mentioned this before, where if we really, part about loving yourself is to kind of understand who you are and your purpose. And a lot of big things is a man, again, we were talking about why, when it comes to helping the lady out when it comes to her groceries or buying a certain meal. Because deep down, we know in our biology, God created us to be protecting and providing. And if we're not doing that to an extent, whether it's for our community or for our loved one, we're feeling like we're missing something. So every man needs to find something that where they
yeah,
feel as though they're contributing something to society. Because when you're contributing, you're giving back, you're gaining so much more. You're
right.
getting respect, you're gaining love, you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining all these different types of things that we seem to be lacking now, especially in manhood. And I tell men all the time, like, a lot of it is big on you. You have to step up and be a man. That's what
Yeah,
women want. And women want to feel loved and accepted. And if you can't make a woman feel loved and accepted and you can't protect and provide for her, a lot of that goes on you as well. It's not always pointing the finger and saying this person's right, this person's wrong. It starts within yourself.
yeah. And a lot of these kids that are having these really big mental health breakdowns, going in and shooting schools and shooting, just horrible things that they're doing, in an age of their life where they should be thinking about college and marriage and things like that. They come from families that are fairly dysfunctional. Whether the dad is left or the mom, is a substance abuser, or they're just a toxic adult situation. I mean, I think I told you earlier that, 67% of American adults live paycheck to paycheck. So
Right.
that financial stress on the family, and you also look at like 80% can't get their hands on $1,000.
Yeah.
So you have a huge generation of kids in households that are just already statistically 7 out of 10 households are just, really make it a tough environment for the kids. And then you get mom and dad that get divorced, and maybe the mom leaves, maybe the dad leaves. And I think there's something to say about, uh, and women, I want to be careful because, you got to be careful today, kind of what you say a little bit. But then again, it's my podcast. I don't care. But I think women will never understand. Women will never understand that innate protector mindset that most men are just, I think we're just born with. I just,
Absolutely.
I just feel, I feel like I need to protect my sons. I feel like I need to protect my dad. I feel like I need to protect my employees when I worked. I feel like I needed to protect my wife when she was alive. And that was something that was validated through life experiences as a child, where my mom and dad said, yeah, that's the right thing to do. Open the door. Yeah, that's the right thing to do to pay for somebody's, if they're at the store and they at the cashier and they look poor and they don't have money, and someone says, well, you don't have enough money for this milk. You just step in and pay for it. I mean, And that's just, I grew up that way. I'm 57, dude. I'm not changing. I'm not going to just all of a sudden conform to society at my age and say, okay, I'm not going to open doors anymore. I'm not going to tell somebody they look nice. Hey, that's a nice dress. Shit. Back in the day, you never got worried about someone saying, well, that's, you're sexually harassing me. That never crossed my mind 40 years ago that telling somebody they looked beautiful wasn't bad. But today I feel like I can't say that. And it's sad. It's unfortunate.
Well, you can't, unfortunately. And a lot of it is unfortunately, I'm just going to say this, a lot of it is part of the feminism movement. And, when feminism, they first started out, it was to gain equal rights, et cetera. And I believe it was a beautiful movement. It was supposed to be for that because women deserve to be treated as equals to men.
Yeah.
We are all humans. But what has become since then has been just, to me, just a bashing of just men where we don't need men in general.
And we're confused. We're confused. We don't know what the hell to say to people. We don't know what to say or do because of conflicting signals in society, Yeah,
that's true too. Because, you say the wrong thing, you could get fired. If, fat shaming is a thing. You can't say that a woman is fat. You can't,
So you're almost like better not to say anything.
Yeah.
And that sucks because we lose connection if we are afraid to communicate because of some adverse reaction that we can't predict somebody's going to have.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard too, because it's kind of like, where is that balance? Because a man shouldn't be able to afraid to tell, I think it was in the United Kingdom that, what was it? That if you yell at your wife during an argument, it's something on one of those lines, that a lot of these things can be fine, that you can get a charge for assault or something like that. And I don't want to quote me on it, but it's a lot of strict laws when it comes to just the language barrier that a husband can do to his wife that is now even constricted to where you can't even say what you want to say without repercussions of losing your job, getting arrested, etc. And we see this now a lot. Even if it's a difference when a man says something about a woman when it comes to media than when a woman says something about a man. When a man says something or he gets an allegation thrown against him, his job is literally done. Like, look at the Johnny Depp situation. Like, if he didn't have evidence, he would have been annihilated. And we just live in a society where you can post something on social media, say one thing, and everyone will just believe whatever they want you to believe. And it's sad because it was going to make men afraid to be men. And that's probably a huge issue right now. Men are afraid to be men because we're going to get criticized for it. If you're a man and you stick up for masculinity, they're just going to call it toxic.
Right. Yeah. It's, especially kids today, it's arguably the hardest time ever to be a teenager in the United States, for sure. And it doesn't have to be that way because we have more things than we've ever had before. I mean, there's more ability to tap resources. There's more ability to do alternative things like VR for mental health, things that I didn't have growing up. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of options if I was struggling with my mental health when I was 18 back in the late 80s, or actually, I graduated in 84 high school. So you're looking at late 70s. Early 80s, there wasn't many options, Terrance. You just went out and shot baskets in your driveway for 2 hours, or you went out in the woods and you walked down the stream and you looked for frogs and snakes when you were a kid, and you just did something. You did something. You didn't sit around and watch Fox News for 3 hours and get pissed off because random people are getting punched in the face on the streets, which again, that's what kids see today. So, hey, listen, you're in rare air. Less than 10% of my podcasts go an hour. So so that tells you how good our conversation's been. No, I do like to have a cutoff around an hour. People's attention spans start to wane, but how do people reach you? What's the easiest way for people to find out more about Meta Wellness? We'll end it with that.
Yeah, if you're interested in having your own platform, whether it's for exposure therapy, group therapy, one-on-one settings, I've done stuff with like rage rooms, all different types of just different aspects that I've built. The creativity is really up to you all. So you can find me at www.metawellness.space, or you can find me on Instagram at Terrance Williams VR.
I saw in a mall here, never seen this before, but they have like a rage room where you can come in and grab a hammer or an axe or something. I don't know how they do it. And you can go in there and destroy stuff, whatever. And you can throw paint on the walls. And, that's an outgrowth of a society that can't find ways to release angst,
And a lot of people can't afford going to a rage room, right? So being able to go in VR and pick up a bat and a hammer and break a TV and some sinks and cash registers, all types of fun stuff you can do in there.
I may have to try that.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I may have to try that. Well, listen, really appreciate your time, Terrance. Really enjoyed this conversation, and keep living undeterred. Okay, man.
You as well. Thank you.
Take care.